All right, so here we go. Um, One thing that could be hard to quote unquote understand is how you could be living as the same you, but a different you, and attempting to process the understanding of quote unquote different timelines. But the different timelines, I don't take that entirely literally. I think the timeline thing, it's a context thing. And when we're talking about the multiverse, it's just a very broad scope and depth of a perspective of quote unquote all is one in just a grand context. Because if everything comes from one spirit that has infinite expressions, then that's the quote unquote multiverse, right? Some type of field of differentiation, expression, etc., right? So, okay, but the video is my phone be glitching like a muffa sometimes. So it's like, but and I'll keep this video short and sweet. But obviously there could be a slight nuance with you know understanding how there's a complexity within different timelines, but it doesn't have to be that complex, right? So if everything is, from one spirit and that one spirit has fine tuned itself into different expressions as the elements have some type of starting point, differentiation transformation point, and then a further off mutable transformation point, and then they have their own unique stationary pre-chemistry, esoteric chemistry, and then the latter combination differentiation from those 12 elements, then that creates all of the other, finer elements that have new collisions, new redivisions, new settlings of temperatures, and new resolidifications that could be gathered, observed, and even mined from one Earth platform standpoint to another. So that's like the origin of chemistry itself, right? So to understand different timelines, we have to understand maybe the quote unquote multiverse and mind the context is the same thing as the universe, right? It's one in the all and the all in the one, right? And maybe there is not infinite timelines, and that's a big misunderstanding. And for me to clarify it like that is like that is number one intelligence. That is fucking 2030 cutting edge intelligence even in China because this is a different type of future energy essence and a different type of timeless reading, right? From a different type of signature of energy, right? So, infinite timelines, we can't necessarily mentally conform to that, right? Because the context is one is in the all and all is in the one. And then people will refabricate that and redistort that within different realms of lower octave whateverness, right? Original open source. So, within saying that, maybe there is not infinite timelines, and on a certain level of a as above level, you know, quote unquote, there could be just 12 timelines. Shout out to DBZ that could have, deciphered that and, decoded that however they have done so cuz DBZ and their Asian culture, they're pointing to some type of decryption respectively of, deep ancient Asian philosophy and wisdom that stems from certain types of, what do you call it, lineages of Taoism. And within that being said, maybe there is different timelines in the context of the different elements, quote unquote, the quote unquote surface level zodiac signs have a different not surface level self, and those different elements and those different modalities of the elements, that's a different quote unquote timeline, but still shares the same spirit and still shares different attributes and, qualities of the self, where elements could have some type of phase of stationary transformation and then going back to source, right? So the elements and the qualities, they're different, right? So in one context, the multiverse is kind of like it's incorrect because you're having a mental understanding that it's like infinite, like chaos without the infinite order, but the infinite chaos needs the infinite order for us to have some type of miracle comprehension, miracle homeostasis, miracle stability within the field of reality itself, right? So when we understand, it's hard to understand that there's different timelines, but there is different timelines, and the different timelines is the 12, right? It's how we have a new self within a different stem self of how we are, quote unquote, all of the quote unquote zodiac expressions, but in a different field, right? And 5D is just the beginning of that, right? It's just the beginning. In the 3D, we have been bounced and ejected out of the true quote unquote multifaceted self, right? So within saying that, it's like, how do we understand different timelines and different universes? Well, we have to understand the context, and we have to narrow it down that maybe there isn't infinite timelines. We're just misperceiving it, misunderstanding it, because our mental conformity is just bunk, pretty much, right? And within the mental conformity being bunk, it's like we're not understanding the context through the multiverse and infinite timelines when it's not exactly literally that, because there's more sophisticated order within infinite timelines and the multiverse, which is one universe and structured timelines, right? So within the structured timelines, maybe we kind of recycle ourselves and reset ourselves, and however we recreate or somehow get destroyed, sometimes if we get destroyed in a different version of ourselves, then we have to rebuild all over. So the quote unquote multiverse is not necessarily infinite timelines. It could be, in one energetic advanced zodiac context, different timelines could be the quote unquote the 12, right? And then obviously shout out to the deep SB, and shout out to the deep, like, the not misrepresented Govinda tradition, right? Because obviously that tradition has been misrepresented up the Heezy, and they don't even know it, because on the overall level, on the overall real essence of the energy level, those cats, they don't even realize they're new to it, because there's so much of the infinite God that the jiva needs to fucking process it, and they're subjective on that shit, right? So what am I trying to say here is like how do we understand ourselves that we could be living in a different timeline? Well, this new 3D paradox version is simultaneously we're ejected from the multifaceted self, because the new individuated self in the 3D is attempting to encapsulate all the other versions of the self. So there's a paradox within being quote unquote esoterically not special and special at the same time. So esoterically, without us even realizing it, we're special and not special at the same time. We're not special because we forgot the fucking gift. And we're special because the paradox is saying this ejected fragment could take on the quote unquote the real, multifaceted self, and seeing the context of the multiverse in the correct way, and seeing how people just replicate and misrepresent the original Govinda tradition without them even realizing it. So that is the number one intelligence beyond fucking the fucking planet Earth and shit. So like so if we exist on a different timeline, this new version of ourselves is attempting to recompensate if we got destroyed on a different timeline. So the hatred we feel, it's because there's a different part of us that lost a war on a different timeline. But how many other timelines could there be? Infinite or not infinite? No, not necessarily infinite. That's too much unrigid. That's too much rigid chaos. There could be a more advanced, rigid, fixed, stationary set of timelines, which could be the advanced zodiac of the 12. And that's cool that DBZ gave that clue, because I give credit where it's due. Number one, nigga. Naga. Super Nagas.